Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we continue our look at giant monsters with the 1966 film DAIMAJIN. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have, so warning, spoilers ahead. I think that is a much less dangerous warning than it was last week when we discussed Godzilla 2014. You still totally need to hear that episode if you have not. But this week we're watching a movie from 1966 that I know I had never seen, so this is an opportunity to dig into something cool. All right, from Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, writer of the currently in trade paperback comic Ben 10 from IDW, and with me from Los Angeles is our special guest, Adam Foshko, the creator, producer, and screenwriter of the extremely popular Skylanders series from Activision. Say hello, Adam.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome back. It's been a long time since you've been on. I think it's been since maybe the Dark Shadows retrospective. So.
Oh, I think you're right.
Yeah.
But we always mention you whenever we use the word film.
Picture. I have
picture.
I defend your use of the word picture.
I love the word picture. To me, it has a very specific connotation. I'm always like, as Adam would say, this is a picture.
I actually don't think it has that specific a meaning.
It totally does.
But whatever you like. Anyway, Adam, you've earned that constant derision. All right. In Austin is Tony Salvaggio, writer of the Victorian Met comic Clockworks from Humanoids and Psychom, the manga from Right Stuff. Tony, say hello, and also apparently you had a fantastic con this past weekend talking about Godzilla, so that sounds awesome.
Oh yeah. I got to talk more about giant monsters and Godzilla at Comic Palooza in Houston, which I hope they'll have me back because it was super awesome. Volunteers, guests, other guests, everyone was fantastic. It was run really well. People seem to be enjoying themselves, so I can't say enough good things about Comic Palooza.
And you did like 4 panels, I understand.
Yeah, I did 4 panels. I would have done more if they would have let me. Yeah, it was really, really cool. Like I said, everything, the volunteers worked so hard. Organizers were cool. It was really, really great. I had a blast at Comic Palooza. I can't thank the people for having me enough. It was really, really great. My friend Samantha put me on the anime track this year, and hopefully it's going to be even bigger and better next year. So,
outstanding.
That was really, really great.
All right, and in Denver, also with color commentary, host of the mom-oriented podcast Pod Moms, as always, attorney Julia Guzman, whose birthday it is today. Happy birthday, and say hello, Julia.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello. Okay, according to Wikipedia, DAIMAJIN is a 1966 Japanese film of the DAIMAJIN series directed by Kiyoshi Yasuda. Its musical score is composed by Akira Ifukube, and I did totally recognize that.
I know, right? It just sounds
Am I telling
so
the truth
good.
here? I turned to you, and what did I say?
You said, is that, what was his first name?
Ifukube.
What's his first name?
Akira
Ifukube, and then he goes, when I was a kid, I remembered the name Ifukube because I would think to myself, if you could be Dracula, if you could be Godzilla.
Yes.
Godzilla.
That was the mnemonic to remember the composer for the Godzilla music was Ifukube. And so, yes. But you can recognize him. The music plays here, and you're like, holy mackerel, that is so like the Godzilla score, that it had to be the same guy. This film, DAIMAJIN, had a brief stateside theatrical release in 1968, 2 years later. Reportedly, it was shown both in Japanese with English subtitles and dubbed into English. I think it is entirely possible that somewhere in New York, at least, they may have shown, at an art house, this movie with Japanese subtitles. English subtitles. The English dubbed version was later shown on TV by American International Pictures under the title Majin, the Monster of Terror. American International Pictures always, it's the mark of like perfect sort of schlocky horror to be found on a Saturday afternoon back in the day. Okay.
That's how I saw it, was on Monster Theater. So.
Oh, really?
Totally.
I mean, seriously, American International Pictures brought us all of those Poe pictures, plus a whole bunch of really crazy other gothic horror, plus all of those beach blanket bingo movies, plus random imported monster pictures, AIP. Man, what a great place to work that must have been. I'm sure that there are some.
That was creature feature quality right there. That was the whole. Yeah. Once you saw that, you went, "Oh, I know exactly what I'm in for."
I know what I'm in for. Exactly.
And it was good. It was all good.
Oh God, when are we going to do The Terror? To me, nothing.
Oh, that's a good one.
Nothing says AIP better than The Terror, a movie that, once again, I have watched 1,000 times and could not begin to recite the plot to you.
You actually turned me on to that picture because I'd never seen it. Because I kept saying, "What's this about?" You go, "I have no idea." But they shot it. They shot it with the same sets from, I guess it was The Raven.
The Raven.
They had it for the weekend, and they still had Karloff.
It features a young Jack Nicholson and an old Boris Karloff, and a script that makes no sense at all. And that's not the movie we're discussing today.
Right.
We're discussing DAIMAJIN, also released by American International Pictures. First impressions. Let's go first to Julia, because it is your birthday. If you could reserve that to a few words, about 30 seconds or so, 45, and then we'll, and the rest of us will do our first impressions real short, except for right after you, I want to go to Tony. And Tony, you can have a little bit more time because I really want to understand some context for this one. So, and each of you, tell me if this is the first time you've seen it, and your first impressions of DAIMAJIN. Julia, happy birthday, and take it away.
Thank you. Well, apologies in advance to Tony, but this is not a movie that I particularly enjoyed so very much. I liked the creature effect. Like, I liked the effect of the Majin running, stomping around. And I thought that was a really cool effect. But it took so long to get to that. Even when you get to the point, it takes so long for him to even break out of the mountain. It just, I was laughing because Tony was having conversations on Facebook about how Godzilla's not in the movie enough, and he's like, "Are you kidding me? Compared to all these other monster movies, Godzilla's on it tons." And this is one of those, whereas the actual quote-unquote monster shows up, I don't even know, 2/3? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, it's way late.
Way late.
Yeah.
And that part was great, but the rest of it, I just, part of it is just that we were watching it dubbed, and so it just kind of felt like...
Oh, that dub is not good.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so just...
I don't know why you guys did that, but okay.
I
felt like it was kind of slow moving, and when we finally got to the DAIMAJIN part, then that was pretty cool. But so yeah, that's my 2 cents, my 10 cents, whatever.
I suspect that some of the violence was also cut, because sometimes there were some weird cuts.
What did you watch it on?
We watched it on Amazon Prime, which has a version, but it is dubbed into English. And I suspect that there's some violence, because there's some weird sudden cuts.
Right. So maybe we need to give it another shot with the actual original. But anyway, go ahead, Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. Okay, I watched it just because. Okay, so to preface this is a movie I saw when I was probably in kindergarten, and it blew my mind because of exactly what you're talking about. Like, no other monster movie was a samurai movie that just happened to have an avenging god in it. Like, that's kind of what. It's a dark movie too,
Yes.
The guys who are killing there's, the plot begins with dudes invading a castle and basically killing anybody who's in the castle who opposes them, and then any other peasant who dares to say that they shouldn't have invaded the castle, and then any other peasant who dares to say anything about the Majin, the creature that they are trying to keep from coming out, actually, because once he's awoken, it's going to be not good for anybody,
Yes.
And so seeing this really stuck with me because it's such a dark movie. It is really slow. And again, if you're expecting, monster battles a la Megalon, or Final Wars or any of those kind of monsters wrestle around and do a lot of stuff, or even Gargantuous, which they're in not that much, in the first one, then this is not that movie. This is a samurai movie that has an avenging giant god in it. And it's very much that. It's a, period.
There aren't even, or at least that we saw, there aren't even a lot of samurai battles or anything. I mean, it's like
no. It's really just a period piece about bad dudes doing some bad stuff, and then how they're subjugating the peasants and stuff like that. There's not a lot of there's a decent amount of sword battles. As far as it depends on which samurai movie you're watching too. Like most of those, short of like Lone Wolf and Cub and even some Zatoichi movies don't have like a ton. There's like pieces, and so it depends on what you want. But because of the way it's structured, again, it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. It was so different from, Gamera, Monster of the Week, goofiness, that as a kid it blew my mind. Like, wow, this can be a thing as well. This is also a monster movie, and that really, really set the tone. And for years I had no idea what it was, and it wasn't until years later, and then eventually I had the fairly rare, it went on a print DVD set. Now the cool thing is, if you are up for it, not necessarily saying everybody is, you can get the Blu-ray set, which looks amazing. It's a 2-disc set with 3 movies on it for $10 on Amazon, or even like Walmart, since I was looking it up earlier. Like $10 gets you 3 movies that look fantastic and are a real piece of history. But again, the people who complain about the new Godzilla or any Godzilla movie where it doesn't have enough Godzilla, like, forget it. This isn't for you, and I apologize. But for people who want to see like cool period piece thing that looks, it's from '66 and it looks like it was done in at least the '80s, if not,
it does look
mid to late '80s. It looks beautiful. The restoration is amazing on the Blu-rays alone. I mean, the DVD looked great, but like I said, it's out of print and kind of expensive. So there's no reason, especially if you're going to rent it, you might as well just spend the $10 and hand it around or whatever. I don't, unfortunately, recommend the dub. I watched the dub and the subtitles because the dub was what I first saw when I was a kid, and so I was going to, hey, what did I see when I was a kid? Let me go back and watch that. The dub takes a lot of liberty because I used the Japanese subtitles track while I was watching the dub to see what the differences were, and wow, they say a lot of different things.
That's interesting.
So, some of it's, the regular, hey, we're going to make this sound a little better for English audiences, and some of it's just flat out like, that kind of changes the tone of things. So, as far as does it change the whole movie? Did you guys, when you watched the dub, see a different movie? Not really, but it does change the tone. I will have to say there's a lot of liberties taken.
You have to wonder if a movie that really relies on tone, like James Bond, like a James Bond movie or whatever, that has a lot of quips and so forth.
Sure.
If you were to watch it dubbed into another language that's your native language, I often wonder if it retains any of the tone, or if basically all that's just lost.
A lot of that gets lost. I've seen some examples of like something translated into Japanese. In fact, a friend of mine talked about going to a movie where it was subtitled, and he was a native English speaker, but he could read. He was fluent in Japanese or Chinese. I can't remember which. And he was watching this movie and he was laughing. And it was like, I want to say it was like Beverly Hills Cop,
right?
48 Hours, something like that. I want to say actually it was Beverly Hills Cop. And he was just laughing and laughing and laughing. Oh, no, Dragnet.
Yes.
And so,
Tom Hanks.
So Dragnet, they come and they go to the mansion. And I forgot what the quote is. But, they say something. And then in the subtitles it was just like, might as well have been like, knock, knock, workman.
Right.
And I think it's like dildo repair or something.
Right.
Vibrator repair. Yeah, vibrator repair.
Yeah, vibrator repair. And in the subtitles it just said like workman.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, that's funny, and everybody's just looking at him like, what's funny about workman? So yes, that can happen.
By the way, that's a fantastic way. the 1980s Dragnet with Jen Aykroyd is just
sure, but probably not as funny if you're watching it in whatever. Like I said,
I was going to say,
remember if it was
going to be all these people in the audience who think that this is a straight cop movie.
Yes.
That's a wonderful idea. All right.
Anyway.
Adam, welcome, Adam. Thank you, Tony, for that. Welcome, Adam. It sounds to me like you've actually seen this movie before. So you were explaining a little bit of how you came to it. So lay it on us. First impressions. Damn it.
Well, actually, this particular movie I had not seen before. I had seen in the U.S. what turned out to be the second picture, which in the U.S. was called, I think, Return of DAIMAJIN. Is that correct?
Something like that, yeah. There's Rapid
yeah.
DAIMAJIN and Return of DAIMAJIN.
Yeah, so basically it was the second one that I had seen. I'd seen it, when I was a kid. It was, as Tony has said, completely refreshing. I really loved, Japanese monster movies. I loved Godzilla, Destroy All Monsters, Gamera, War of the Gargantuans, everything except, Frankenstein Conquers the World, which really made no sense to me why they were giant. That's another story. But, I saw this and I was like, oh my God, this is really, really cool. I hadn't seen Samurai. I hadn't seen all this stuff. And, it was sort of like, it had all the stuff that you could possibly love in it. Epic historical nature of a samurai picture, high drama of Japanese monster films like Godzilla, because they all have high drama. And then sort of the village stomping awesomeness of a giant stone god seeking vengeance against all evil. What else could you want? These are all amazing things. But I had not seen this particular picture, so this actually occupied the second picture occupied a really special place in my heart. So when I sat down to this picture on Amazon and the dubbed version, I started watching it, and I said, I don't exactly remember this part. This looks kind of the same. It's not the same. It's sort of like, this was sort of like the Japanese Game of Thrones with a giant vengeful stone warrior. I was like, this is all very sort of, it's big. It has the Japanese, has the samurai bits that I liked. But then it was, as Julie was saying, something happens, and then we wait 10 years. I'm like, 10 years.
And it feels like 10 years.
No, they actually said it was 10 years besides. Yeah, so I'm watching it, and I liked it, but for me, not as much as the first one. And that really just, as the one that I'd seen earlier, and that could just be because I was watching, this dub. It could be because I was expecting something else, or I don't know, maybe the second one is a slightly better picture. But this delivers in all the right places. There's so much build-up. There's so much kind of interesting sort of period elements that if you like samurai pictures, the stuff's all there. And you don't find that much. There wasn't that much out for me at the time as a kid. And certainly now, it's become more prevalent. But, I contend that movies like this, when we were younger, I think for me were sort of the gateway to Kurosawa. So because of this series, I actually started watching, Akira Kurosawa, because it was the only other place where I could see samurai. And it was very, it sort of began a sort of more pointed direction towards samurai pictures that I could get here, that didn't involve giant monsters, that were really more about, a little more epic, more historical. But this series was the beginning of it. So in my seeing it today, it was, on the one hand, it was kind of like revisiting something that I really, really liked a lot. And Tony's right, it looked amazing, so much so that I thought this picture may have happened, there's that word again, may have happened after the one that I had seen, but apparently this was the first one. It looked that good, like it was shot in the 80s. But, there was a part of me that really felt like I was missing something because it wasn't the one I'd seen before. So I dug it, but I kind of now want to go back and see the original one that I had seen.
I'll be honest with you. Like I said, again, you can get it for $10 through Amazon, and subtitled and dubbed. Each one has the dub. I hope you aren't disappointed, because I've watched them several times since I got the box set, and I think they aren't as good as you progress. Like the third one's kind of, the second one's pretty good, but I think this one's better. And again, maybe that's my thing because I saw this one first, but I really think that, like, the first and second one are pretty close, but I still think the second one's not quite as good. So, but hopefully you remember it. Like, hopefully you think I'm wrong on that, because I really want you to like the one that you liked.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to go see it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's so in the Blu-rays, it looks freaking super good. So
that's such a delightfully, I don't know, generous thought, Tony, that you just said. It's like where you go, you know what? I hope that you like the one that you like. You know, that's really
yeah.
wonderful.
Well, I mean, nobody wants to see the thing that they saw and that they have a special fondness for. I mean, how many times have you seen something that you remembered from a kid and you watched it and go, wow, I liked crap. Like, this is terrible. And, you know, and it's kind of disappointing. What now?
I said a couple of examples just leap instantly to mind, honestly. That's
sure.
That happens to me all the time. But yes, and it is disconcerting when you watch something you go, wow, everything that I thought was in this movie is actually stuff that I brought to the movie myself, you know, in my memory. You know, and sometimes that's okay. I mean, sometimes to me, I think I've said before on this show, many times all I really ask out of a movie is that it has like one thing that I can walk away from and be inspired by or use in art. I almost said reuse, and I guess sometimes that's even true. But, you know, I go to old movies looking for inspiration, and sometimes it doesn't matter to me if the whole movie holds together. I'll skip my first impressions other than to say I actually enjoyed this a lot more than Julia did, probably less than Tony, but you know, I loved it, and I'm going to give instead a really brief summary of the plot, and it's part of the reason that I like it. So this is basically, let's pretend for a moment, because the movie's not very long, at least the one we saw. It was only about, you know, I think it's like 90 minutes long. And the first hour is, you know, the first two acts is courtly drama, basically. You have the village of nervous peasants who are afraid that the earth tremors they're feeling are the great god in the mountain who's going to come back. They all go off to deal with, you know, a small disaster, a small earthquake, and at that moment, an evil lord rises up to vanquish the just lord who has been ruling the area, and the just lord's children are taken away by servants into the mountains to flee, while the evil lord, you know, basically drives the whole area into the ground over the course of like 10 years. And he literally puts them at a Conan the Barbarian style, you know, they're just at the stone. They're being whipped, they're moving giant rocks. You know, it's true horrible slavery. They're mean at every possible moment. They won't let people go home if they get sick. They don't feed them enough. All kinds of badness. So it's fomenting revolution. And in the meantime, this boy and this girl, grow into beautiful and virtuous young people because they're being taken care of by basically a samurai named Kogenta and a priestess named Shinobu, who are basically visions of virtue, who are raising these two children up to be perfect and ready to come back and take their place as rulers of this particular territory. And the problem is, when they actually when it comes time for them to try to come back and seize the throne and get rid of the evil lord, everything goes wrong, and so the priestess has to pray for help from God, you know, or from the gods, in fact, from the god of the mountain, which is this giant statue of a warrior that just sits in the mountain, and one presumes has not actually been causing these tremors, or who knows, but regardless, she prays and prays, and he, in fact, comes to life and decides to turn the rebellion in the favor of the virtuous. And that's the movie in a nutshell. In other words, up until the moment when the giant statue comes to life, you're looking at this may as well be any other given political drama or a samurai courtly drama kind of movie. You know, it's got soap opera elements, it has battles, it looks gorgeous. I presume most of the time we're actually looking at a set when they're walking around, you know, the mountains and the trees and stuff. But it just looks, you know, it looks fantastic. And then the statue comes to life and starts stomping all over the village, except for that as we'll get to in a second, this statue doesn't act like all giant monsters. So that's DAIMAJIN in a nutshell. And so why don't we get into it? That was the basic plot, but I want to ask, I guess I'll start with you, Tony. Why is this a giant monster movie? And, is it fair to think of it that way, or is it something else?
I would say it is in the fact that, it's got a man in a suit. It's got all the hallmarks of giant monsters.
And describe this monster for us. Describe what he looks like when he's stomping around. When it's the
he's this green-faced, almost. He's more like what they call a goblin, except the goblins in Japan have long noses.
I do want to say that I thought it was really cool that he converted from the stone, because he was his stone self first.
Right.
And he comes out of the mountain, and then he raises his arm up, and suddenly he converts over to this goblin face, which is really cool. I like that effect.
It's like a combination of like goblin demon kind of thing, and it really does harken back to I think maybe also, and I don't know. I'd have to ask like friends of mine from Japan, if people. If younger Japanese audience would still get it, what culturally. Oh, by the way, they did make a new DAIMAJIN TV series called DAIMAJIN Canon, Kanon.
Okay, and that's like a modern day one, right?
Oh yeah, I don't know. I watched it somewhere. Somewhere had it streaming, and because I try to do things, legally as possible, somewhere had it, and I watched some of it, and then I think they either took it down or somehow I couldn't see it anymore, and I wasn't a huge fan what I saw. It was kind of interesting, but it was a totally different take, and it's modern day, But the new DAIMAJIN looked both kind of cool and kind of weird, I don't know. But, it goes, a lot of it is very cultural. You have this thing, it goes, to some of the, kind of animism beliefs and, that things can have spirits.
Yes.
A statue can have a spirit. A rock. There's another legend of like the yokai or the supernatural beings. After 100 years, supposedly. Then I'd read about it, but it was reintroduced in another movie I saw recently, where they say after 100 years, a thing might develop a spirit and start trying to trick people and stuff. And so you have this idea of, things can have spirits or be animated. And you have also, you get the impression that while he is an avenging god and the village can call him up, he might just, if you're not careful, he might also just destroy everything.
Yes.
Which he almost does.
That was cool. That was really cool. I just wanted to say, I thought the first moment when he first begins to show himself, this creature, is when he isn't walking around yet, but the evil lord and his soldiers go up to destroy this god. They go up to destroy the statue because that's a way of insulting the people that they've conquered. And so they hammer into it with this giant chisel. This chisel the size of like a bedpost.
Into its forehead.
Yeah, into the statue's forehead, and it starts to bleed. And so they go, what? And then the ground opens up and squishes them. That was awesome.
Yeah, but because of the beginning where they're like, an earthquake happens, which, by the way, there's a lot of that kind of stuff because, that's part of what feeds into the Godzilla thing and the giant monsters we talked about before. In a lot of Japanese culture, there's kind of this sense of impermanence because of earthquakes, volcanoes, etc. You're going to have to rebuild your stuff all the time. In fact, they just rebuild temples, temples where we think that's a really ancient temple, and it looks like it. That temple may have been rebuilt not too long ago. Mm-hmm. It certainly hasn't. There are very few things that have lasted since what we think of as antiquity. If you go to Europe and you see a cathedral that's several times older, multiples older than our whole country.
Right.
You
right.
put it in perspective. You're like, just wow, what we think of as sort of modern, like there's the pyramids, and then you can go to a cathedral in Europe. And you're like, wow, this is, a crazy piece of architecture. This is pretty old. And then you realize exactly how old it is.
Yes.
And it's mind-boggling. And so, you may have temples and things that aren't as old as you think they are because they've had to be rebuilt, or they just rebuild them from time to time because they're mostly wood. And so, you have this idea of that. But, like, in general, like I said before, the movie isn't for everyone, certainly. And I was kind of taking a risk, like, recommending this one because it is such a slow burn. Mm-hmm. And I kind of knew this coming in, but I think that the drama that leads up to that it's just a really interesting period piece to me. I don't know. It's certainly different than most monster movies, but I think once it kicks in, especially, and I think it goes with the sense of dread. Like from the beginning, they set that up with, oh no, we gotta tell him not to come, and they do so, it looks like, successfully. So you get that sense of like, wow, if the people who like him want to keep him at bay, what's it going to be like?
Yeah.
But I think, younger kids, like most younger kids, like why I like this when I was like 4 or 5 years old, I think a lot of people my age are being like, oh, good grief, how can you watch that? But I don't know. I guess I was just a geek and a Japanophile from a young age for whatever reason,
Well, I mean, the intrigue stuff I think was interesting. I don't think Julia was as captivated by it, but I found interesting this sort of, it's a Braveheart kind of story in a sense. There's this wonderful bit where the samurai that's been taking care of them, Shinobu, I'm sorry, not Shinobu, it's Kogenta. Kogenta has been taking care of them, and he goes into town and he gets captured. And everybody communicates back to the 18-year-old boy, Tadafumi. They say, hey, Tadafumi, your mentor has gone into town. He's been captured and he's hanging by his heels. So, you ought to go rescue him. And so he does that, and it's very much like a bunch of medieval dramas we can think of because, of course, it all backfires and he gets himself captured, which was the evil lord's big plan. And I love that stuff. I mean, are you kidding me? This is like that's what adventurers are made of, and it's vastly more interesting than watching, some chemist and his journalist girlfriend argue with the army about whether they're allowed to get into this building, and in yet another 1960s or 70s Godzilla movie. Those are always the same. This at least has the benefit of being, tremendously different.
Right.
As far
that's another reason why I wanted to cover it was this is different. I mean, for better or worse, like I said, I'm taking a risk. Like, I kind of expected at least somebody to have the same reaction that Julia did. I mean, I can't blame, like, that's a valid response. But I'm hoping that people, this just, no matter what, it's not a very widespread movie. And the fact that it's $10 means everybody can own it. It's just crazy that it's that cheap for a Blu-ray. For 3 movies, like $3 a piece. It's cheaper to buy the Blu-ray than it is to rent it from Amazon.
Well, what's interesting about this is, even if you don't like Godzilla movies, like if you say, okay, if you're the kind of person who didn't like the story on monsters, or where it got into a realm where you Godzilla changed over time. If you didn't like the kind of humor, or I wouldn't say campiness, but there's a certain sort of style element that runs through those pictures, which is indicative of those kinds of movies. If you really wanted something that was grim, is possibly the best word that I can use for it. It's grim, but it's very moralistic in the sense that the evil ones do pay in the end. But the force that goes against it can kind of go either way. It's more of a force of nature than more of a truly avenging God, because the bad guys are punished. But as you guys were talking earlier, he kind of keeps going and is about to destroy the rest of the village until he sees the girl and is about to step on them, and then sees it's her and goes, okay, and goes and does his thing. It's sort of like having a giant pet shark. This is a swell pet shark until he eats your arms off.
Right.
Yeah. So he's sort of more of a force of nature. But this is also the kind of thing where if you couldn't get someone necessarily to watch a Godzilla picture, you could maybe get them to sit down and watch this movie because it has all the other sort of samurai and dramatic elements in it. I mean, this is the kind of thing, it's perfect for a Sunday afternoon, kind of matinee, sit down, watch it. It just happens to also have this awesome avenging samurai stone god dispensing justice. That's sort of the added element. It's the kind of thing that in the Venn diagram of these kinds of pictures, there aren't too many. Although this is really just a movie. There really aren't that many of them that occupy the same space. I can't think of too many others where you say it begins as one thing and ends as another. Everything else kind of is, you're here to see a Godzilla picture. Sit down. This is like, you're going to see a samurai picture, and there's, a house defeating another house, and samurai sword fighting, and the whoosh sounds kind of added in for extra.
And a slave driver.
Right.
Yeah.
Slave drivers, yes.
It's all there. And that has a lot of appeal, even if you don't like these kind of movies. But this is one that you could like. So the other, it's not a risk, but the other part, the other reaction could be, hey, I don't like other Japanese monster movies, but this one I like because this is more like the kind of thing that I did. And I think
it's almost
maybe
random.
You find a lot of
Japanese monster movie.
Yeah, I think you find a lot of people probably like this one that may not like other movies like this.
Yeah.
Sure. It's also like I haven't watched like a lot of samurai movies. I mean, I binged on the Zatoichi box set. It's like 25 movies around Christmas.
Oh, my goodness.
And, like being immersed in that, like I think watching this again was really like, yeah, this is, not just for nostalgia, but like I'm in samurai land again.
It's kind of refreshing. Kind of takes you back. Or like I said earlier, like Kurosawa.
How would you explain, Tony, how would you explain samurai pictures, and Adam, if you've seen a few? Because I have to admit, I have a vague familiarity, but I could not name a single samurai, well, except for the Seven Samurai. But I mean, what does that genre mean? If you're like at a coffee shop and they go, hey Tony, what you into? And you go, oh, lately I'm into samurai pictures. What does that mean? What's in those pictures?
Well, it depends. I mean, they run the gamut. And there's also, like, there's samurai pictures that are of, like, the classic, like, Kurosawa nature, which, are usually, Seven Samurai, where it becomes, 7 dudes up against, like, impossible odds. And then you've got Zatoichi, which is the whole thing about a blind swordsman who's, used to be a Yakuza, who, usually defends people's honor or himself as well, but in tricking people because he's just, no one will believe a blind guy can do what he does, right?
Right.
Then you've got, Lone Wolf and Cub, which is a kind of similar, but a guy who roams the countryside with a baby cart that has James Bond-esque, like crazy weapons, who's defending his child as well as his honor. And then you've got things like Harakiri, which are more kind of a slow burn in the remake. And then, I would say if you're going to start with something more modern, is it 13 Samurai? Was that the Mike movie? Which was, I thought was pretty awesome.
I haven't so...
Oh, man, that one. If you haven't seen that, that's 13 Assassins, I'm sorry. Yeah. That was
concept
awesome.
of, because these are not kung fu movies, this concept of a samurai movie being, in my mind, they're usually a lot like this, really. They're courtly intrigue where, occasionally there are coups, and when there are coups, people get beheaded and stuff like that. But generally, you're dealing with a lot of, like, brothers betraying brothers and wives going over... Yeah.
Also, you'll see the really, a lot of really good ones will have, a sword battle will often take very little time. It was dangerous. Yeah. The whole thing with these quick, martial arts moves and kendo and Bushido kind of stuff was totally different. Kendo being the art. But yeah, I mean, that's in fact like watching something like 47 Ronin. Like I was watching it, and the swordplay, they're their own. It's its own thing, but the swordplay tended to play out a lot more swashbuckler than quick, and then somebody's dead. Kind of swordplay that you see in most of these, which is closer to how things were. I mean, I actually got lucky and went to Toei movie studio, Toei Movie Village in Japan, and where it's like their version basically of Universal, Universal lot, and they have like, here's how we make a Universal movie. Well, they had like, on the hour, every 2 hours, however long it is, like, here's a samurai movie that we're filming. And they played a mock, and they did a live action, samurai movie shoot, and that was really awesome to see.
That's a really neat place. You showed
that
me
was really, really cool. Yeah, it's
the whole thing looks like a medieval village where you'd have a samurai drama play out. Yeah,
in fact, I went to a medieval samurai haunted house, which was one of the scariest haunted houses I've ever been in because it was so weird and different. Like, there's not a guy with a chainsaw and another guy who's got guts and a Frankenstein's monster. It's like a ghost with long hair, and there's a zombie samurai who comes after you, and like all this stuff where I'm like, and it's kind of more close in because it's a smaller haunted house. So that was, like, I knew it was fake, but my heart was just like racing because my body's like, I don't know what this is, And so that was really cool. So it is just a different feel than even watching like a Shaw Brothers movie. Even though both have swordplay, there's just a different feel to it. I think you can, and there's a lot more. Also, I think it's still on Netflix. Twilight Samurai, also really, really good samurai flick. Like there's tons of stuff out there, if you wanted to see. Although, again, this is the only one with a giant monster, as far as I know. At the end, a dude in a suit who is willing to and they have the medieval version of Godzilla masers. They have catapults and hooks and chains, and they're trying to do what the army does in Godzilla. These are guys who are doing the samurai version of that.
That's right.
It's really, really cool. They're trying to vanquish him, as you would a Godzilla. Like, we send instead of nuclear missiles or whatever, they try to put a spike through his head, which fails colossally.
Well, that's actually kind of what's one thing that's interesting here, and I was going to ask you something about Japanese monster horror movies in general, but yes, one thing that's wild here is you go, well, this is kind of an experiment in a sense, because it's not like this is 1956. This is 1966. Godzilla came out, 12 years earlier. There's been, Rodan, and there's been all these other giant monster movies. So this movie is coming around at a time when, the people are already familiar with the idea of giant monster movies. So if I'm a Japanese consumer looking at what movies I'm going to go see this weekend, I look at them and go, DAIMAJIN, and, somehow or another I get some marketing that tells me, oh yeah, no, it's kind of like Godzilla, only it's a samurai, and I go, okay, but what's really truly experimental is not just that it's a giant human, which is kind of wild, but that it's medieval. I mean, that's odd. That's truly strange. Because first of all, there's no skyscrapers.
Right.
You're stuck with, and so on the plus side, you get to have a medieval drama, which I think is inherently going to be more interesting than stupid scientist dramas.
No, I disagree with that, but whatever.
And that's fine. I mean, feel free to disagree.
I want to hear the disagreement in that.
I do. I totally want to hear the disagreement.
Well, I just don't think. I mean, I don't know. I guess if you like medieval stories, then that's fine. But for me, it's like to watch the scientist stuff, like in the Godzilla movies, where they're going, well, if we do this, then we're going to destroy the world. If we do this, then we're not going to learn about the species. It's much more interesting than watching these people have political fights. But what I want to say, though, is that I think that the actual creature is fascinating in this movie because it's I love that he's a big walking stone sculpture, but then also he turns into this goblin, and then also at the end, he's like just a spirit. Like the spirit's kind of freed. He leaves, and he just leaves the statue in a crumble of rocks in the town. So it's a very fascinating creature. And I was really curious, Tony, and I missed whether, Jason, if you asked this, but I don't think it was answered. If you did, if that is is that a myth or a legend already?
Is there anything to this at all, or is it all?
As far as I've seen, it's not like a thing, like, oh, there's a thing in the mountain, but I think it's based on, bits from all over. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure there was a village that had something, and it's based on, that things can have spirits, and that I don't, and I could be totally wrong. I'm sure there's a scholar. Like, I haven't done as much research. I should probably research it more, but as far as I know, it's kind of a basis of, of several legends, kind of,
I see.
That there were things, and there are, you'll see statues and stuff like that around, but I don't. Not in the same way that this is,
May I draw a dotted line since this movie was made in 1966? May I draw a dotted line from this to the original movie Der Golem that came out of Germany?
Oh yeah, definitely it was influenced by that. In fact, that's one of their influences for sure.
Completely. I mean, the whole idea that there was the Jewish ghetto, and and basically, everyone of course knows the story. And it's actually I went back and looked at this really not too long ago, and it actually, with the practical effects, it holds up surprisingly well.
Mm-hmm.
Just the fact that they summon a mazik, which is a wizard, a Jewish wizard, summons forth a demon and receives the word of life from him, and then all of the story, and creates the golem out of.
Right, but I've never seen it. I mean,
you should totally see this movie. I'm so surprised that it holds up as well as it does. It really does, and the practical effects are astonishing for the time when you think about when it was made, and it does. It goes forth and it renders justice. But then it also falls in love with the daughter of the mazik, and then calamity ensues. It's again like a force of nature in the sense that it does what it sets out to do, but then it does a bit more. So there's more than enough of that set of ideas, I think, in this, and though maybe there's not as much that we're not seeing right now in Japanese culture or Japanese history or in Japanese legend for this picture, then certainly I think the golem has a lot to do with it.
Sure. One of the what I found was very interesting was when I was over there, my friend took me. I'm simplifying this, but he took me to where he grew up, Kamakura, and there was a section where when they and I apologize for not having the correct names, but basically, Christianity was outlawed.
Yeah.
And so, but there were areas where they created it was basically like a stylized version of Mary. And, it was a new kind of myth, but everybody kind of knew, you could go worship this, and you may not get persecuted in the same way. And it was, in the particular one that I saw was off in the corner. You had to kind of go inside this thing. So it was still, off the beaten path. But it was interesting to see how, when all the Christians were kicked out or crucified, even, that there still retained a statue, a place you could worship, and you could still go, well, no, we're not Christians. This is what we're worshiping.
I love that
idea. That was fascinating. Like, to me, that little bits that I saw when I was there that I didn't know about until my friend had kind of shown me. It was really truly like fascinating to see all of this and like go to the temples and everything. No Majins that I saw at all, Lots of Buddhas. That was really interesting too, and different things. But yeah, I think it, like, again, I did read where the golem was definitely, one of the things that influenced the look and how he comes about of DAIMAJIN.
But what's interesting is that the golem. With Majin, he responds directly to, first of all, the dishonor of the evil lord guys attacking his statue. But second, they pray to him for help. And then once he is resurrected, like Adam says, he's like a pet shark. He just starts lashing around and destroying everything until a little girl prays for him to be at peace once more, and he drifts away, which is wonderfully folkloric. But he really seems to be moved, truly moved, like the wind. He's moved by goodness, Whereas the golem, if I recall, not if I recall, but I was reviewing that a little bit. It has its own thoughts. Golem has things it wants, right? And Adam, you've actually seen the picture, but I'm given to understand that, the sorcerer creates the golem to be a servant, but that backfires because the golem is independent and wants to fall in love with the daughter and so forth.
No, that's right.
And I wonder, last week we talked about Godzilla, and I said the one thing that I really wish is that we could put Godzilla, we could have somebody be Godzilla's intercessioner and let us know what his character arc is. What is it that Godzilla wants? And it's the same here. I really, I want to know what Majin is up to, and whether.
Well, I'm curious how far he would go if they didn't intercede.
Right.
Because at the end he's crushing things, and he finally gets his revenge on the Lord. In a pretty gruesome manner, where he takes the spike from his head and stabs him through. And
pins him to a big wooden something, like.
Oh, by the way, another thing that's in. I have a DAIMAJIN action figure that a friend of mine got me a while back, and it's from the second one. And you know how they have the guy on the cross? Well, in the second one, there's a woman on a cross, and it actually has that as one of the things that you can. That's in the package, which was not go over very well.
That's the one. That's really the one that I like.
Yeah. And in that one, actually, I don't know if you remember, Adam, but he kind of just picks up the cross and he's just kind of waving it around.
He does.
Like,
he's
man.
still on it, and he's holding it.
Yeah.
And then he's kind of risky, kind of looking like, this is all going to end badly for me because I'm on this cross. And then I'm this giant statue, and I'm over the water. This can't go well. No, this is a really good one. I'm curious though, Johnny, whether you when the Lord is stabbed basically with the spike from the Majin's head in this picture, do you actually see it? Because when Jason and I saw it on streaming, there was another one of those weird cutaways to like a seagull.
Well, they cut away and then they cut back and show him like they do a cutaway. They cut back there where he's like and it's not nice.
We saw it afterwards. It's not pinned.
Yeah. They do cut away. It's the same. They cut away. They don't show him being stabbed, but they do a lot more with sound effects, which in a lot of ways is more effective. I still think that you can do a lot of that. I think we've lost. There's still directors who can do it, but I think we've lost a lot of the, in your mind that can look so much more gruesome.
Yes.
Than if they show, because they do have some really gruesome sound effects, and and they cut away to all the villagers watching, going, ooh, all their reaction shots are just so like, that is terrible and gruesome, and even though he's this terrible person who's put everyone to the sword, we don't want to see that.
Yeah,
and their reaction shots really sell it. But I love Majin, his looks of just kind of, his face doesn't change, but in his eyes it's like this look of disdain, like to almost everyone. And they'll say things to him and he just looks down like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And that involves just wrecking this. First I'm going to kill him because that's what I'm after. But after that, I think I'm just going to wreck stuff. And it takes her like interceding and going, crush me instead, like do whatever you want. And he realizes like, wow, maybe I've gone too far. And he, that's when the spirit, okay, I've done enough. I've said my piece and crushed enough stuff, killed a bunch of people, and he goes away. But in general, like, I am kind of curious, having rewatched it, like, if she didn't intercede, I mean, where
what happened?
Where does he stop?
I guess he would just crush the sea.
I guess he just crushes things until he's like, wow, I guess I've crushed, or causes enough earth.
Guess now this really brings up an interesting point. And Julia, I think has part of this, I think, on her mind, and that is when you see one of these kinds of pictures, you're sort of, there's this kind, which is feudal Japan. Then there's the modern or 1960s, 70s Japan with Godzilla, or the giant monster du jour, stomping around on Tokyo. And then they bring out the military and the trucks, and then they bring out the ineffectual missile launcher, and then the slightly more energetic, but also equally as useless energy ray machine, which I thought was awesome, but did absolutely nothing. And having this giant Majin come and smash a feudal Japanese town, to matchsticks, and it's sort of like it's like having the slow, eventual, but a very fatalistic, hand of death coming for you, and versus modern science going, oh my God, there's a giant force of nature that's going to do something. What are we going to do? Let's put the minds of men at work. I'd like to see a remake of this where you have the giant, Majin, rise from the depths, and then we have guys going, okay, what are we going to do? And we have to demonstrate that we can do nothing against it. It would be awesome to kind of see that again. I will
say to the point earlier about the what's more interesting is this feudal this whole what did you call it,
I call it courtly
the medieval the courtly intrigue, the medieval bit versus all that Adam's talking about. I think there's a place obviously for each, and I actually really, really love like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, stuff like that, where you still have the courtly intrigue stuff and you still have all but it's totally different because it's this magical universe. It's not about the big monster smushing everything. And so I think that's the thing is, to me, it's like if the giant monster is going to be smashing everything, I feel like, I don't know, it just feels like it lends itself more to the whole, to what Adam's talking about with the big army and everything, rather than the courtly intrigue. But I don't know, it's just me.
I think it'd be interesting. I think the interesting part of having a remake, and I guess I guess we should watch more of DAIMAJIN canon and see how they handle it. Is this is you have a monster based on religion versus Godzilla, which is a monster based on science. Mm-hmm. How do you handle that? Because it's a different thing culturally as well. That's another thing that's interesting about this one. You've got everything, almost every giant monster you've seen. Frankenstein's, Baragons, King Kong is a natural, phenomena on Kong Island, Skull Island. Whereas this is a religious idol, And it's different, in a foreign religion to most people who might see this. I mean, of course, in Japan, and again, it's kind of made up, but it's based on a lot of cultural things. But, for most of us, it's especially anyone who saw, it on Monster Theater, I would argue that, most of the population who saw that, had no real frame of reference for an avenging God that you pray to or pray to not come about,
Yes.
That's
I think
really different.
I find it amusing that the Japanese audiences, assuming that this movie was well accepted, that the Japanese audiences were perfectly willing to accept. Okay, fine. There's a mountain somewhere where they worship a god that I've never heard of. That's fine, because I know there's like a billion different gods out there that people worship.
Well, we watched whatchamacallit with the gods, the Clash of the Titans. No, the Clash of the Titans.
Clash of the Titans.
Yeah, that one is all about that whole thing, but the whole movie's about that.
Absolutely.
That's the thing. It's not a piece, a little part amidst all this other stuff.
That's right. Hera herself a goddess herself prays to Zeus essentially and says, "I demand justice. You must do X thing to punish your son and avenge mine." And that means something. Well, and by the way, remember that Godzilla was made up too. In other words, in 1954.
No, of course, but it is based on science.
Yeah, there's nothing. This is made up by movie people. The fishermen over there talk about this gorilla shark or whatever the heck it's called, gorilla whale. That's out there. That's made up. So the producers of these films, even in '54, are already willing to just create folklore out of whole cloth, which I find delightful. I think that's there was never anything so cool up until Stan Lee, as far as that goes. As far as just going, you know what, I'm making up some stuff and it's going to be awesome. And yeah. So, golly, I can't believe we've been talking for an hour about DAIMAJIN. I mean, it actually.
Joy and I were.
But we are coming up on the hour, so it is time to give us our final thoughts and then come around for endorsements.
By the way, I did post it to the Castle of Horror page, but the Godzilla, one of the first Godzilla specials by Art Adams, the Godzilla Color Special, was actually pretty much Godzilla versus DAIMAJIN. Like, it wasn't called DAIMAJIN, but if you can get a hold of Godzilla Color Special number 1, and I think it's on Amazon. When I finally read that, because I was just jonesing for a Godzilla comic, and it had come back when I was in college, and got that. I was a really extremely happy camper. Thanks Art Adams for this awesome, this is everything I would have wanted as a kid, and now it's come to life.
That's pretty cool.
I saw it for pretty cheap on Amazon, although Lone Star Comics, mycomicshop.com didn't have any in. I bet you can find it. And it's sad that it's not worth very much because I have a decent copy, but I'm glad that people can get it, because if you liked our Monster Retrospective, you can buy yourself a copy, and it's pretty cheap. And
is it on Comixology?
I don't know. I didn't check. I just checked Amazon. I checked my comic shop first, and then I checked Amazon, and there were a decent amount of copies. So
and it was called what again? It was called Godzilla.
Godzilla Color Special, and it's on. I posted it last night on the Castle of Horror podcast page.
All right. So that is an endorsement before the endorsements. So
sure.
Okay, let's get our final thoughts, and I think we went same order: Joya, Tony, Adam, and then I'll go if I have anything left to say. So Joya, final thoughts. DAIMAJIN.
Well, I already talked about the giant monster is pretty cool and a neat effect, and it definitely it's threatening. I don't know if I'd say scary, but threatening. There's a few. I do want to say there's a few poignant moments. Like there's some relationship-y stuff. Like the kid, his mom's dying, and he's trying to get his dad to come, and he can't because slave drivers not letting him, and whatever. All that stuff. So it's like I almost feel like it's a couple of different to use Adam's word pictures in one. So I think that if you fleshed that whole thing out and just had that be a story, that was kind of an interesting story. That whole universe that they're in. And I am glad that slave driver guy gets destroyed, impaled. And so that was good. And there were some kids that were really cute, which I always like. Cute kids in the movies. So there were definitely a few things that I liked before the point at which the DAIMAJIN comes out of the mountain. But once he comes out, then I'm like, this is awesome. This scene is pretty cool. So anyway, I do wish there were more time for him to stomp around and do whatever.
Very cool. Let's see, Tony. Final thoughts. Something you've been waiting to talk about for years. DAIMAJIN.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for indulging me on this one. The other one I want to push for eventually will be Chinese vampire movies, but later at
Yes.
some point, Mr. Vampire and the like. But
you remember
for now, I really, really thank you for indulging me, because this was kind of, this is not a movie for everyone. But for the people who do want to binge on the Zatoichi box set and maybe watch like another thing was Shogun for me as a kid, and 13 Assassins, and any number of other samurai flicks, and I think that Adam really pegged it as far as like this being a gateway to Kurosawa. I think it's really great. I think that's perfect. For those people, this is definitely I think really awesome, and I've loved it. It, like I said, blew my mind as a kid that a monster movie could be this. And again, I don't know how, none of probably maybe my stepbrothers, but most kids of that age would be like, oh, good grief. Like, when's the monster? Especially if you've seen Gamera movies where it's like a lot of monster, or like I said, like Megalon or any of those where it's like you get to see all kinds of, and I love that. But this just, like I said, blew my mind as a kid, and I hope that people will go out and get the Blu-ray and check it out, and if they hate it, pass it around to somebody else who does like it. So,
very cool. Gosh, Julia, did you go?
Yeah, I went, but Adam hasn't gone.
Okay, so I apologize. I'd lost my outline. It's my lack of a computer in front of me. Okay, Adam, final thoughts, DAIMAJIN.
I think I'm with Tony on this. This is a picture that I remember at least vague pieces of, because it wasn't the same movie, seeing as a kid. But there's enough of that here. There's enough of the samurai element. There's enough of the courtly drama. There's enough of the venging, stone god coming to life and just wreaking total havoc on this town, and these people who wronged these villagers so thoroughly for so many years, 10, I might add. But it's I think it's a I don't know if it's a subgenre. It might be technically, but I think it is this kind of picture is very unique and stands on its own. And I think again, this may be the kind of Japanese. I'll just group it in with Japanese monster movies. It may be the kind of Japanese monster movie that may or may not appeal to the hardcore, but certainly might appeal to those who might not be so interested in other Japanese monster movies because of the camp or whatever they might perceive as camp or other things that are the humor that's in that. Or they might not find it believable, where this really this has sort of a magical realism sort of element to it. You kind of go, oh, this could have happened in feudal Japan back in, whatever. It almost seems like a fairy tale. There's something to it that seems that kind of crosses a bunch of different bridges, I think, and a bunch of different barriers. I think it's terrific. It makes me really want to go back now and get, the disc that Tony's talking about and watch the second one, because that's really the one I think I have great fondness for. But I would have to recommend this picture. I think it really speaks for itself. It really stands on its own. I'd like to see a remake. There's a part of me that thinks that maybe that might ruin the mix, because it totally works in the time and the place that it's set in, and maybe if you brought it into modern day, that it would not work, because the mystique would all sort of disappear.
Sure.
And that's entirely possible. It really is the stuff of a legend, but having all the classic elements that we all love. And so because of it, I think I would almost say this stands alone as sort of a legitimate, to use the word, Japanese monster picture. And this is one that I would, if my dad didn't like these kinds of pictures, I would say, hey, Dad, we could watch this movie and it would be cool. But he does, and it's okay. So this is the kind of thing you could share with your sort of non-monster movie enthusiast friends.
What's
and
funny?
Come out okay.
When you say that, though, is by and large, there's a lot of TV drama, like samurai TV dramas.
Yeah.
I always wanted to watch them, and I asked my friend from Japan, like when we were first starting to hang out, I was like, dude, do you watch those TV dramas, samurai? That must be so cool. He's like, what are you talking about? That's for old people. Old people watch this. Like, but that's for my grandpa. Why would I want to watch these boring? Like, why would I want to watch these boring samurai dramas? Those are, why do you even care? Like, it was really like, I was like, wow, I thought that was cool. It's like, no, that's for grandpas.
That's really funny. That is.
We're watching Matlock and Murder, She Wrote here. It's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I'm hoping that, you know, hey man, samurai showed up in Matlock. That'd be pretty awesome. Murder, She Wrote, that'd be cool too. But like, yeah, to him that was just like, and it's true. The more I found out about it, and I watched a few too, I could kind of understand where he's coming from. But it was really funny because I was just so Jones. Like once I heard that was a thing, you know. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, that's for your grandpa. It's just great.
I was thinking about the Slee Stack on Land of the Lost, and how the Slee Stack were all, you know, hissing and stupid, basically. Remember, you know, they're like,
except for the one guy,
right, except for the one. There was one
who was from the future.
Enoch from the future. Yes, he came from like an alternate future that had where the Slee Stack had overrun everything, and his story is complicated, and I don't even remember most of it. But you know, he wore like a shiny, sparkly robe, and he was smart. And I was thinking, you know, this may be the closest to a smart giant monster there is. And I don't mean like a smart story about a giant monster. You might feel that way or not. But I mean, the character itself at least can listen to the prayers of a child saying, please don't do any more, be appeased, take me, calm down, and it can listen. You know, and I was thinking as I was driving around, I was thinking, what would it be like, you know, to be DAIMAJIN, and like you get together with the other giant monsters, you know, because he'll come back, you know, so it's like he comes up hundreds of years later and he's hanging out with, you know, on Monster Island, and he's trying to like gather the monsters together and get them to like do stuff, and they're all just stupid. He's the only smart one. You know, he's the only one who could like create something that they could all vote on, and they wouldn't even vote on it. You know, he would, and it would be very frustrating to be DAIMAJIN. But
read that Art Adams book, and that's pretty much they summon him up, and I mean that's pretty much it. You know, that's as close as we get, which is cool.
Isn't that why we have the Peanuts? We have the Peanut Twins. You know, with
Mothra. Mothra is pretty close, actually. Mothra is like fairly intelligent as far as that goes.
Yeah.
You know?
Gamera later became a friend to all children, so you know they would be like guys talking to Gamera through the submarines that they made, and it was all fine with their upsetting shorts. And
by the way, there is Godzilla on Monster Island where the monsters talk to each other.
That's right. True. They totally talk to each other.
It's ridiculous, but it's awesome.
Yeah, but
that one's just a weird, crazy anomaly, by the way.
Godzilla on Monster Island? Is that what that movie was called?
Was that?
Or was it Destroy All Monsters?
That was Destroy All Monsters.
No.
Wasn't it?
Monster Island. Is it Godzilla on Monster Island? I have to look it up, but it's Godzilla on Monster Island, but which has nothing to do with Destroy All Monsters, where they live on Monsterland. They call it Monster Island, but they're like, Monsterland on Monsterland.
Oh.
But yeah, I saw it in the theater.
Disneyland, but with monsters.
That would be awesome. Please invent that. Go do that. I want Disneyland with monsters.
Disneyland with monsters. Yeah.
Okay.
I would go there a lot. All Monsters Attack is also.
Yeah, I would go there.
I find it interesting that one reason why I don't think you could have a pure remake of this movie. I like this movie a lot, but one reason I don't think you could have a pure remake is because we can believe an awful lot of things, you know, and we being the audience. We can believe Thor, the Norse god, but he has to really be a race that early humans called gods. The notion of a giant monster and an innocent child can pray, a priestess can pray and the monster comes out of the mountain, an innocent child shows faith and the monster goes away. That level of willingness to entertain sort of a naked spirituality, I think just doesn't exist. I really cannot imagine a Hollywood movie where priestesses pray and a monster comes out of the woodwork. It just doesn't. It doesn't. Instead, you'd have a character walk out. Hank Azaria playing somebody would walk out and explain that it looked like the priests actually brought the monster to life, but actually it was somehow or another science or lightning or something. And so I think that level of innocence is just not going to happen, which is sad because that's part of what makes this a great piece. And I might be wrong. I mean, it's possible that somebody could go, no, Jason, you're totally wrong. We're going to next year release a totally spiritual monster movie. But I don't see that happening. I really, really enjoyed this. But we've already. By
the way, Godzilla versus Gigan or Godzilla on Monster Island is what we knew it. Except,
I know that's the next thing I'm going to watch.
Except Monster Island appears in Destroy All Monsters and the really terrible Godzilla's Revenge, which we just pretend that never happened, as far as I'm concerned. But but Godzilla on Monster Island really has not much. Although, you know what? There is a Godzilla theme park in Godzilla vs. Gigan / Godzilla on Monster Island. There is an actual Godzilla theme park. So there you go.
The way you could do a Godzilla ride, let's say you had a dark ride, like Space Mountain or something, and then you could have roaring and giant feet falling around you, and half of it could be done with holograms and giant screen displays. Just there are all kinds of ways you could mix up digital and practical effects to create the feel of.
Well, the lucky bastards who got to go to the Godzilla Comic-Con experience last year got to experience some of that. But if you do want to see what Japan in the 70s thought a Godzilla theme park would be, watch Godzilla vs. Gigan. Also,
what is it like? Do you remember?
It's a crazy giant Godzilla, and there's all... Yeah, and it's so ridiculous. The subplot involves a mangaka, comics creator who's making terrible monsters. He makes these... He has these ideas, and he's really mad that the editors don't listen to him. But they are terrible. I being a comics creator, I kind of side with the editors on this one. But it's really worth seeing. I lucked out and got to see this one on the big screen. But yeah, I'd totally forgotten. So there you go, Adam. Godzilla vs. Gigan, Godzilla on Monster Island. There's your monster.
That right now.
Awesome. I have to see it.
All right, let's do endorsements.
Great, but it's really, really fun and crazy. And it's got cockroach aliens, which is also awesome. So
what?
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, it's full of great.
Miss Julia, are you still with us, or have we long since put you to sleep?
Sorry.
Well, I'm
happy birthday.
Okay.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. So yes, my endorsement is going to be shocking to the whole country, but I have to go with X-Men: Days of Future Past.
Wow.
Which totally rocked. Love that movie.
I haven't seen it yet, but that sounds awesome.
Yes.
I'm surprised.
So I won't spoil it for you. You should totally see it.
I need to see it as well.
Yeah, and there's a new podcast out there called Explain the X-Men. That X-Plain, the X-Men, and it's this husband and wife team who are comic book editors themselves, and they are X-Men obsessives who know just reams of obscure X data, and so they spent the last couple of episodes touching on Days of Future Past, and it's really a fantastic listen. That's my endorsement out of order, but it goes with Julia's endorsement, so I have to throw that one out there. Yes, you should totally. I will post it on the webpage. Explain the X-Men will help you prepare for Days of Future Past because they'll tell you what you need to read beforehand, and they don't even spoil the movie, which is great. So let's see. We went Julia, Tony. Do you have any endorsements for us?
I have one which is coming out. It's going to be a while, but I recently got to see on the big screen the new anthology by Otomo, the guy, creator of Akira, who I was familiar with. It's changed in there, but he did some comics. They released them as one-shots here. Previously, Magnetic Rose ended up in a previous anthology this one is called Short Peace with like peace sign, and it's several really great pieces. One which was the one I was telling you about, where these things come to life, like umbrellas and teacups and that kind of thing, and a guy who has to deal with that. But their Farewell to Weapons was the comic, which I think you can still get around if you look up Otomo's Farewell to Weapons. They adapted that, and it looks like somebody has the rights in the U.S., and that's how we got to see it. So it'll be a few months, but Short Peace should be on your radar. And I also have to call out that I met the comics creator and screenwriter Tony Lee, and had a crazy, funny story that's too long to tell here. But you should check out some Tony Lee comics. He does Doctor Who, he's done MacGyver, he's done Battlestar Galactica, and many, many things it's not in front of me. But he's a really awesome dude and cool creator. So Tony Lee from England, you should check out his work. He's pretty awesome, and hung out with him at Comic Palooza along with other cool cats. So you should buy some Tony Lee comics, definitely.
Very cool. Let's see, Adam, what are you going to endorse for us this week? Or do you have anything to endorse for us this week?
I do. Actually, I have. I may have endorsed this once before, but now we're at the end of season 2, and I just saw the final episode of Hannibal on NBC Friday night, with Mads Mikkelsen as Hannibal Lecter, and I have to tell you, this is a really good series. He is eminently watchable. It is not, and it is. Have any of you seen it?
I have never seen it. I mean, I probably should be. Everybody says it's brilliant.
Watch the pilot. First of all, it's NBC, so it's not like they're going to show everything. So Julia doesn't have to go, okay, he's eating people. Come on. But what's interesting is if you see it's shot and designed so well, and it's a Brian Fuller. I think he developed it, which he's very interesting. If you see a frame from this show, you can sort of tell that it's this show. It has a sort of a unique signature, and they do a fascinating job of making Lecter both incredibly attractive, not handsome, but incredibly attractive, but then also repulsive in other ways. So it's interesting that you find yourself going kind of sort of drawn to him and drawn to the situation, and you go, how do I feel about that? It's really it's interesting, and some of the casting choices were really interesting. It's good. I've watched it throughout, and there are some shows that kind of lose my interest along the way. I'm still watching Fargo, which just sort of came out a while back, and it's interesting. But I've really liked Hannibal. I've really been surprised by it, and it's been fascinating to watch. So I recommend that.
Very cool. All right. Well, I may very well try it especially now that the summer is here and there's very little that's new to watch.
Although I will tell you that now that we have X-Men Days of Future Past, I'm going to now rekindle the time that you and I went, Jason, to the Tiki movie theater in California to watch X-Men First Class.
Man,
if I can find that playing there, I'm going back to that crazy drive-in to watch this picture.
Oh, the Tiki drive-in, is that in Montclair or Claremont? I'm trying to remember.
There's not a lot of variation in those names, and they're right next to each other.
Anyway, it's over there somewhere. But
is there really a Claremont and a Montclair right next to each other?
Right next to each other.
That's hilarious.
What do we call this place? We want to be different.
So the Tiki Drive-In in Claremont or Montclair, one of those, is, it's the only one, right? But it is a big old, it's a new build drive-in, okay? So it has moguls where, you drive out, and when you park your car is tilted up at the screen. And it is just wonderful, and the center, the center, restaurant thing is all designed with Tiki stuff.
And there are 4 screens in 4 different directions.
Right. Oh, it was delightful. Yeah. So Adam and I caught X-Men First Class there, and that was great. So yes, but I wouldn't give to be in L.A. right now to catch X-Men Days of Future Past at the drive-in. That sounds fantastic. All right, so I've already trampled all over everybody else's endorsements. So I will just throw this out. First of all, Houseu. So Tony mentioned. Oh God, Tony mentioned.
Oh, I love it.
Weird Japanese haunted house stuff, and in fact, Adam and I recently.
We saw that in L.A.
Yeah, in L.A. we went to this art house picture and saw Houseu, which is a freaktastic haunted house movie from Japan.
It really is.
And it's very, very strange. Tony, I don't remember if you've seen it, but I know that we've seen portions of it.
Oh no, I have the DVD from. Yeah, man, that was an insta buy because it's truly insane. And the DVD, I guess it's Criterion if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
freaking
crazy.
Awesome. It has, I have the Criterion one, and it has a booklet. I don't know if it's out of print, but if it's not, you should also own that. Well, I don't know if I can recommend it to everyone, but if it's something you dig, the extra materials that come with it are amazing, and the DVD restoration looks so freaking sweet.
Houseu is a batshit crazy movie. I mean, it is about I think it's 5 girls, each of whom represents a slightly different personality style. One is gluttonous and one is athletic and blah blah blah. And one's beautiful, and they're called by names like Pretty and Hungry.
Yeah. Well, it's
the
based
Japanese
on
schoolgirl Spice Girls.
Yeah, it's based on a idea I think his daughter had.
Yeah.
But it's like a fever dream. If you watch it and you fell asleep during it at any point and you woke up, when you told people about it, they would go, "Are you sure you didn't eat something bad?" And then, did you eat a bad hot dog or something?
It's very simple. But these girls go to this house to visit their aunt because it's their vacation or whatever it is, summer vacation. They're going to stay with the aunt, and the aunt is very old spinster because she never got over losing her lover in the war. But her house is haunted and nothing is as it seems, and the hauntings are so weird. I mean, so strange. Dancing pianos, flooded rooms, razor wire, weird craziness.
A dude turns into a pile of bananas? That happens.
Yes. There's the dude who... There's even the creepy guy. Every other haunted house movie has and also that Joss Whedon movie about horror movies always feature, the guy at the way station who says, "Oh, don't go near there. It's very scary."
Oh, yeah.
Same thing here, only in this case it's this goofy farmer dude who runs a fruit stand. But as soon as the girls are gone, it turns out that he's just a skeleton ghost. And it is Houseu, Hausu. You must see this movie if you want to see some whacktastic Japanese horror that will blow your mind. And
this is one where we might get hate mail because people are like, "What the hell did you send me to?" But look, I think it's awesome.
There's nothing in it that anybody will be offended by or
No, it's just crazy.
It is just crazy. It's just pure D craziness. So that is my major endorsement for the week. I got one more, which is the Laguna Riviera. So recently, Adam and I were in L.A. We were looking for the remains of a cafe that I'm writing about in a new book. We didn't find the remains because it was now the parking lot of a sushi restaurant. But
the remains.
Right. That's right. That's the remains. The remains is the parking lot of a sushi restaurant. So much bound up in just that sentence. But right across from that is a 1948 beach hotel called the Laguna Riviera, which has all these rooms and suites with French doors that open up onto balconies that look out at the ocean. And it is just gorgeous and feels like a place for where George Burns might run into Victor Mature back in the 1960s. I mean, it is literally Hollywood just gold. And it was so cool to check that out. So if you're on the West Coast, you totally got to check out the Laguna Riviera out on Coast Highway in Laguna Beach because it feels like you're in an old movie. that is it.
Awesome.
We have run the gamut of craziness. I want you all to join us on the Facebook page and argue with us and tell us we're crazy and tell us we recommended the wrong things and tell us we're totally wrong or that you're totally right. Like us on Facebook, leave us good reviews or bad reviews, whatever you like. On iTunes, tell your friends, subscribe, check us out on Bleeding Cool. Point is, we want to hear from you and we want more listeners. We will be back next week with more giant monsters. I think it's going to be King Kong, honestly. And that's it. Thank you, everyone, for this celebration of Julia's birthday and Giant Samurai. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.